That road was part of my routine. I had driven that stretch between Little Rock and Memphis dozens of times, always the same way, the same sequence of curves, the same gas stations. It was like driving at home. So when I saw the new traffic sign, I noticed it right away. It was big, bright orange, with an arrow pointing left and the word diversion in bold letters. I had never been there before. I thought it was construction or something new from the highway department. I slowed down, signaled, and got on. As soon as I entered the new road, I realized that something was strange. The asphalt was darker, as if it had been laid recently, but without any signs of use, no marks, no wear. The plates were familiar, but they looked mirrored. The numbers were right, but everything was backwards, as if I was driving on a reflection of the original road. I looked in the rearview mirror and no longer saw the point where I entered. It was as if the entrance had disappeared. And the radio started to crackle. Just static. Neither music nor voice. I kept driving, trying to stay calm, thinking that I would soon be back on the main road. But nothing was coming back. The curves were all on the wrong side. The shoulders had signs with illegible writing, like badly formed symbols. I tried to read one of them slowly and it almost seemed to form my name. The daylight grew dimmer, as if a filter was covering the sky. Everything seemed real, but wrong. Like a poorly made version of reality. I started to feel nauseous, a slight pressure in my ears. Something there didn't want me to be there. After half an hour, I saw a truck just like mine coming in the opposite direction. The same in every way, model, color, even the stickers. When it passed me, I looked at the driver, and saw myself. But with completely blank eyes. He didn't blink. He just kept going as if it were natural. I almost stopped, but instinct stopped me. I kept going. And the GPS, which had been silent before, spoke in a distorted voice, "You have arrived." But there was nothing ahead. Just more road. Endless. Inverted. The GPS turned off by itself right after that sentence, and the truck's dashboard began to flicker. The interior lights flickered, the air conditioning stopped, and for a second, everything was completely silent. No engine, no wind, no noise. A heavy silence, as if the whole world had held its breath. I tried to turn around, to find a fork, but there was no way back. Just a straight road, with poles that seemed to curve slightly inward, as if pushing me forward. And with each kilometer, everything seemed more blurry. As if reality was slowly melting away. I saw an abandoned bus station on the side of the road and decided to stop. I got out of the cab, shaking. The buildings there looked like models, as if they were just facades, with no interior. I walked over to a trash can and tried to open it. It was solid, with no opening. Everything there was just surface. No depth. Even the wind was strange, it blew, but didn't move the leaves. I ran back to the truck, but when I got in, the key was no longer in the ignition. And there was a note on the dashboard, written in my handwriting, I shouldn't have followed the signal. I was stuck looking at it. I took the note, turned it over, but there was nothing left. The key appeared in my pocket, as if it had always been there. I started the truck again. It worked. And as soon as the engine roared, everything began to clear, as if the fog that covered the place had receded. The road looked normal again, at least enough for me to keep driving. But I knew I wasn't out of there yet. Because the sky was still inverted. The clouds moved in reverse. And the sun was in the wrong direction. After another hour, without knowing exactly how, I passed through a narrow tunnel, one of those made of rusty iron. The light flickered, and as I emerged on the other side, the familiar road appeared. My usual gas station. The signs were normal. The colors were correct. I parked, trembling. But when I got out, I saw the traffic sign in the rearview mirror, the same one from the beginning, disappear like dust. And on the ground, near the rear wheel, a fallen warning sign with a symbol I had never seen before. As if it were the emblem of that place, or a warning never to return. Since that day, I avoid any detour that seems too new. If a sign wasn't there last week, I go straight ahead, even if it means driving an extra hour. The problem is that sometimes, even on a familiar road, I feel like something is off. A curve that seems longer. A gas station that appears earlier than usual. And the reflection in the mirror, the subtlest thing. I've seen, for a split second, my own face looking back, but without expression. As if the version that came from that other road still exists. Still accompanies me. I've tried to talk about this with other drivers. No one believes me. But one of them, an older one, listened to me carefully and, in the end, told me something I'll never forget: there are roads that are like mirror traps. They show you who you shouldn't be. And I understood. Because after that night, I started dreaming about that version of myself. Driving the same truck, on the same road, but where the world is always gray. No sound. Never ending. And I watch it all as if it were a movie that never stops. One morning I woke up to the sound of my GPS turning on by itself. I looked and the screen was black, with only the word "Return" flashing in red. I threw it on the floor of the cabin, turned everything off, and kept my eyes open until the sun came up. Since then, I only travel during the day. And even then, I saw that traffic sign once, covered by a tarp, on the side of the road. As if it was waiting for the right moment to reappear. So, if one day you see a new sign on a road you know by heart, keep going straight. Because there are detours that lead nowhere. They just turn you inside out. And show you what lives on the other side of the mirror. The storm started late in the afternoon, while I was still on my way to deliver a load in rural Missouri. The sky darkened quickly, the wind gusted, and soon the whole world turned to water and noise. But nothing out of the ordinary. Anyone who lives on the road has been through worse. I kept driving, slowly, hazard lights on, eyes glued to the road. The problem was that it didn't stop. Not after an hour. Not after 2. And when I realized it, it was already dawn, and the rain was still falling with the same force. Without let-up. Without a break. As if time had stopped. I pulled over to the side of the road and tried to find shelter, a radio signal, something. Nothing worked. My cell phone wouldn't connect. The radio just crackled. The GPS was stuck on a blue screen that said, "Calculating." I got back on the road trying to stay calm. But everything seemed the same. Same curves. Same stretch. Same sound of drops hitting the roof in anger. Visibility was almost zero. I started to think I had gotten lost, even though I was driving straight. And then I noticed something worse: the fuel gauge wouldn't go down. I had been driving for hours, but the tank was still full. I passed a gas station. I stopped, ran out with my jacket over my head, but the place was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. The pumps were still working, the sign was flashing, but there was no one there. I went into the convenience store. Shelves were organized, lights were on, the radio was playing an old song softly, but no sign of life. No employees, no cars, no movement. I got a coffee, left the money on the counter on impulse, and went back to the truck. But what gave me goosebumps was realizing, when I left, that the coffee was hot. As if someone had just made it. I got back on the road with a heavy heart. The windshield wipers seemed to be fighting against something thicker than rain. And it was when I looked in the rearview mirror that I saw it for the first time, something, standing in the middle of the road. Far away, but clearly visible. A tall, thin, dark, motionless figure. It seemed to be made of smoke, but with a firm outline. As if the storm had given it shape. I blinked, and it was gone. But the fear remained. And with it, the certainty, I wasn't going to get out of there any time soon. The rain continued. It was already the third day. I knew because it showed on my wristwatch, the only item that seemed to be working normally. But the body no longer understood time. I ate when I remembered. He slept for short periods, but his dreams were the same as when he was awake, the sound of the storm and the figures on the road. They started to appear more frequently. First stopping, then walking slowly along the banks, almost always in the corner of my vision. Never in the center. As if they knew that if I looked straight through, they would disappear. But they were there. I felt it. And getting closer and closer. One night, or maybe it was day, it didn't matter anymore, I saw one of these figures crossing the road right in front of me. It seemed to float. I didn't run, I didn't honk. I just stood there, watching, transfixed. As it passed, it left a trail of vapor, and the radio, even though it was turned off, crackled to its own accord, releasing a single word, trapped. The voice wasn't human. It was like a worn-out recording. I screamed inside the cockpit. But the sound was lost in the water and the wind. This wasn't just rain. It was as if the world had collapsed onto a forgotten stretch of road, and taken me with it. The truck started to show signs of failure. The lights would flash, the speedometer would show random values. But the engine wouldn't die. It was as if it was being held in place by force. Sometimes I would look through the window and see reflections that didn't belong in the cabin. As if there was someone behind me. I would look at the seat and it was empty, of course. But the rearview mirror showed something hunched over, as if it were sleeping. A gray, soaked, motionless figure. When I blinked, it disappeared. But the passenger window was fogged up every morning. With fingerprints. From the inside out. I started writing in a notebook, trying to keep my sanity. I wrote down dates, times, names of gas stations I must have stopped at. Everything was the same. The same road, the same bar, the same empty gas station, the same rain. The only difference was the distance between me and those things outside. It got smaller every day. Sometimes I heard a faint knocking on the side of the truck. Like something scraping against the metal. Other times, a slow breathing near the cab door. And worst of all, the words on the radio were getting clearer. You're not leaving. This is it. Stay. I stopped fighting. I kept driving aimlessly, just waiting for something to change. The radio started playing a soft, repetitive song that I had never heard anywhere else. It was almost hypnotic. A melody that seemed to have no beginning or end. And, little by little, I began to notice that the creatures were not just surrounding me. They were guiding me. They always appeared where the road curved, as if showing me the way. I didn't try to get out. Because, deep down, I no longer knew if there was a way out. I was part of that storm now. As if it had absorbed me. There was a dawn, or day, I don't know, when I saw them all at once. Standing along the road. Some crouched, others standing. All facing the truck. Hundreds, maybe thousands, spread out as far as the eye could see. And when I passed them, they all started moving, at the same pace, as if choreographed. They didn't attack. They just followed. As if they were escorting me somewhere. I cried, there, holding the steering wheel, not knowing if it was fear, despair, or a silent surrender to whatever it was. Until one day, or night, the rain stopped. Out of nowhere. The sky cleared. The road was dry. Everything was silent. But I knew it wasn't the end. Because when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw my reflection, smiling. But I wasn't smiling. It was like the thing that had stayed with me was in control now. And when I finally turned off the engine, I heard one last phrase from the radio, "Welcome." It was a voice that sounded like my own. Only, more tired. So if one day you find yourself driving through a storm that never ends, don't push it. Don't try to get out. Because maybe it's not a storm. Maybe it's a door. And maybe it's waiting for someone like you. I've never had a problem driving at night. I've been a trucker for over 15 years, crisscrossing the length and breadth of the United States, and I've always found that driving at dawn was actually more relaxing, less traffic, less stress. But that night, somewhere in the backwoods of New Mexico, I regretted not having stopped sooner. The gas gauge had been in the red for a while, and I knew I'd pushed too hard. When I finally saw an old-fashioned sign for a gas station 2 kilometers down the road, I felt an immediate sense of relief. It seemed like a stroke of luck. Little did I know what was in store for me. The access to the gas station was via a dirt road, a bit bumpy. The sign was faded, but you could still see the worn letters spelling out the name, Carter's Fuel. Everything looked very old, kind of frozen in time. There was one of those small convenience stores, 2 rusty gas pumps, and a flickering street lamp at the entrance. It was all dark, but as soon as I parked the truck near the pump, the outside lights of the gas station turned on by themselves, as if they had motion sensors. I thought it was strange, but I figured it was some old technology still working. Before I even got out of the booth, I saw a guy approaching slowly. He was wearing dirty, worn-out overalls and a dingy red cap. He didn't say anything, just pointed to the pump and nodded, like, "Leave it to me." I thought it was a good thing, because I was too tired to chat. I got out of the truck and went to stretch my legs a bit while he filled up the tank. I walked around nearby, looking up at the sky and trying to find a signal on my cell phone. No luck. Everything was very quiet. No sound of cars passing by, no crickets, nothing. And that's when I turned to call the attendant and ask if they accepted cards, he simply wasn't there anymore. At first, I thought he had gone to the convenience store to get something or take care of something. But I didn't hear a door, I didn't see any movement. The hose was still connected to the truck, but it wasn't filling up. I walked to the pump, looked around, and knocked on the store door, which was locked. I knocked again, called out loud, and nothing. I started to feel a strange discomfort, as if I was being watched. The gas station seemed abandoned again, as if I had imagined that guy. I looked at the ground and there were no footprints. Only my own. I went back to the truck, and then things got even stranger. The truck door, which I was sure I had left closed, was ajar. At that moment, my stomach turned. I quickly went upstairs to check if anyone had touched anything, but everything was exactly as I left it. But there was one detail that made me freeze: the passenger seat was wet, as if someone had sat there soaking wet. And I'm not talking about sweat or condensation. It was as if someone had climbed out of a tank of water and sunk into the upholstery. I tried to rationalize it, to think that I might have left a leaking bottle there, but I knew I hadn't. This was another type of humidity. And it smelled strange. It wasn't the smell of gasoline, nor of mold. It was a kind of metallic, sour smell. It made me feel sick at the time. I went back downstairs, my head spinning, trying to understand what was happening. When I looked at the store building, the lights inside were on now. But I swear that, seconds before, everything had been off. I went there again, pushed the door, still locked. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to see inside. There was a kind of counter with some shelves behind it, but everything was dusty. But then, again, I saw him. The attendant. Standing behind the counter, motionless, as if he were staring at me. But something was wrong. He wasn't wearing his cap anymore. His head looked wrong. Very white, almost translucent, and his eyes were wide open in a strange way, as if they were dry or false. I blinked, startled, and he was gone. It was like he'd never been there. I backed away, shaking, unsure if I'd really seen it or if my mind was playing tricks on me. I turned to leave, but when I looked back at the pump, it was pumping gas again. All by itself. The old digital display showing the numbers rolling. It made no sense at all. I hadn't touched anything. And the noise, that sound of gas rushing by, was echoing in a way that made me sick, like it was louder than it should be. Like it was happening inside my head. It made me so panicked that I started running for the truck. I turned on the engine, desperate to get out of there. The whole gas station seemed to have changed while I had been gone for a few minutes. The lights were flashing now, and one of them went off right as I put it in gear. But before I left, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw him again. Standing right in the middle of the yard, facing the truck. His face seemed completely featureless now. Like a wax mask that had melted and become smooth. I had never stepped on the accelerator so hard in my life. I just wanted to get out of there, leave it behind. But it seemed that, no matter how much I drove, the road remained the same. Dark, empty, and endless. After about 10 minutes of driving on that straight, deserted road, I began to calm down a little. The fuel gauge, which should have gone up with the refueling, was still in the red. I looked at it and felt my heart beat faster. It was as if none of it had been real. I stopped the truck on the shoulder, turned off the engine and stood there taking a deep breath. The night was completely silent again. Not a living soul around. I picked up my cell phone, and as expected, no signal. But this time, the device's screen flashed on its own and froze in a bright light, with the reflection of my face distorted. I had never seen that happen. The reflection of my face looked wrong. It was as if the image was delayed, like a video with delay. I would move my head, and the reflection would take a while to catch up. Until, for a second, the image on the phone smiled. But I didn't smile. I threw the phone on the seat and started the truck again. I needed to get somewhere with people. With light. With noise. With life. But the road led nowhere. No signs, no intersections, no sign of a city. It was like being stuck in a loop. Everything started to look like a staged scene, as if I were driving in place and nothing was really changing. Then I saw a new sign, lit by the same flickering light as before, Carter's Fuel. Same gas station. Same dirt road. Same crooked driveway. Had I turned around without realizing it? Or had I never left? The truck sputtered, coughed, and then stalled. No power, no warning. The engine simply died. I staggered out, and there he was again. Standing, waiting for me on the side of the road. His face smooth. His overalls dirty. Only now he was holding something in his hand. A gas can, dripping dark liquid onto the ground. I stood there, unable to move a muscle. And then he took a step toward me. It was at that moment that everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning. The truck was parked on the shoulder, as if I had slept there all night. The pointer is still in the red. The post did not exist. Not even the dirt road. No sign. Just asphalt and the desert around. No sign that it had been real. But the passenger seat was still wet. And to this day, every time I look in my rearview mirror at night, I swear I see something passing behind the truck, like a shadow that never leaves its place. I never traveled at dawn again. And I never stopped at any gas station without seeing movement first. I'm not the type to believe in supernatural things. I always thought that these road stories were an exaggeration by tired people, seeing things where there are none. But after what happened on that route between Nevada and Utah, I stopped doubting. It was a common trip, taking cargo to Salt Lake City, as I had done many times before. But that night, something was different. The road seemed darker than usual, even with the high beams on. And it all started with that child in the middle of the asphalt. I swear on everything I saw a boy there, standing, looking at me, right in the middle of the track. I swerved hard, almost losing control of the truck. I stopped a few meters ahead, my heart pounding in my throat. I ran down, screaming, trying to understand where that kid had come from. There was no one. No tracks, no sound. The road was completely empty. I got back into the truck, a little shaken, but I kept going. I even thought about calling the police, but I didn't know what to say. And it was that same night that my sister called me, crying, saying that our father had suffered a heart attack. Right at that moment. Deep down, I already knew that the two things were connected. I just didn't want to accept it. I thought it was a horrible coincidence. But the next night, it happened again. Same road, just further ahead. The child appeared again. Standing still, with his face half covered by shadow. I swerved out of instinct, but this time I was so angry that I braked, got out, and walked backwards with a flashlight. Nothing. Not a cricket or the sound of the wind. A dense silence, as if the world was holding its breath. I got back to the truck, trembling. And when I turned on my cell phone, a message came in. My childhood friend, Brandon, had been in a motorcycle accident. Serious. Hospitalized. It was the second time. And I started to wonder, what, or who, was that child? I still tried to rationalize it, thinking about stress, hallucinations, lack of sleep. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every time that figure appeared, something bad happened. And it wasn't just anything. It was as if she was punishing me, or worse, choosing. The road became a minefield. I drove, waiting for her. And the worst of all was the way she looked. She never ran, never spoke. She just appeared there, standing still, staring at me. A small figure in the dark, as if she wanted to be seen. As if she was testing me. And that third time was when I really lost control. It was the third night in a row. I was tired, paranoid, and yet I decided to keep going. I was scared, of course, but I also had a strange feeling, as if I had gotten myself into something that I couldn't get out of. I drove with my eyes glued to the road, my fingers pressing down on the steering wheel with tension. And then she appeared. She wasn't walking, she wasn't running, she was just there. This time, she was closer to the truck, as if she knew I was going to try to swerve. I tried to brake, I pulled the truck to the side, but I heard a loud noise, a thud that made me freeze. I was sure I hadn't hit anything. Even so, I stopped and got out, praying that I wouldn't find anything. The asphalt was empty. No sign of tire slippage or anything. I stood there in complete darkness, listening only to the engine running in the back. And then my phone started vibrating. It was my mother. I answered and she was in shock, saying that my aunt's house had caught fire. A short circuit, they said later. But it was minutes after that. Minutes after the appearance. Each time, someone nearby was hit. As if she was making me pay, little by little. I began to wonder what I had done. Who I had hurt. Or if it was just a game I had accidentally entered. But it was too late. After the third time, I started to be afraid to sleep. I dreamed about the same face. A childish face, but expressionless. Pale, kind of blurry, as if it wasn't made to be remembered properly. And when I woke up, I had the same feeling, that she had been with me, there in the truck, watching me. I even installed a camera on the dashboard, thinking I could record something. But the files from the early mornings when she appeared were corrupted, or with static. As if something was blocking the recording. As if she only wanted to be seen by me. I started to avoid that stretch of the road, taking absurd detours. But she found me anyway. The fourth time, I was already sleeping in the truck at a busy gas station, surrounded by lights and people. I thought I would be safe. But I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of the radio playing by itself, tuned to a frequency that only emitted a hiss. I woke up startled, and there, standing on the other side of the yard, among the trucks, she was. The same child. Staring at me. A fixed point in the middle of the confusion. No one else seemed to notice. It was as if I was the only one who could see. I got back behind the wheel, trying to start the truck to get out of there, but the lights flickered and the engine took a while to respond. When I managed to get going, she was gone. But the call came minutes later. My former co-worker, Dan, had died in a robbery that same morning. I went into denial after that. I started deleting contacts, isolating myself from everyone, as if that would stop anyone else from getting hurt. I spent weeks sleeping in cheap motels, avoiding the road at night. But eventually, routine pulled me back. I had to work. And no matter how hard I tried to avoid the route where it all started, the child kept showing up in other places now. As if she had stuck to me. It didn't matter the state, it didn't matter the time. If I were behind the wheel, she could appear at any moment. And I didn't even swerve anymore. I just braked hard and waited for her to disappear. The fifth apparition was different. I was on a stretch of highway with a lot of traffic, something that was rare on other occasions. And yet, she appeared. Between the headlights of other cars, in the middle lane. When I braked, I almost caused an accident. A car hit the side of my truck, spun and hit the median. The driver walked away, but he was in shock. And while the others helped him, I looked around for her. But this time, I saw nothing. Nothing until my phone rang. It was a message. Now you've seen what it's like to lose someone close to you. It was from my wife. But she had died 2 years ago. In an accident. On that same road. That destroyed me completely. I broke down. I stopped driving. I sold the truck, I gave up on life on the road. I spent months locked away, trying to understand if it had all been real or if it was just some kind of prolonged freakout. But the problem was that, even when I was stopped, I could still feel its presence. Sometimes, I would hear the sound of tires screeching on the asphalt in the early hours of the morning. Other times, I would see small footprints in the dirt on the threshold of my house. I started to think it wasn't about the road. It was about me. As if I was carrying something, some kind of curse. As if the child was just a way for it to show itself to me. To this day, I don't know what it was. I don't know why you started. But since then, every month, on the same day as the first appearance, I receive a call from an unknown number. There's never anyone on the other side. Just breathing. Sometimes, as a child. Sometimes, no. I just stand there, listening, waiting for it to end. Then they hang up. I can never track it. I can never stop. And the worst part is that, even though I've stopped driving, I still dream that I'm on the road. Always the same, dark, straight, and with a small figure appearing out of nowhere, right in front of the truck. Always looking at me. Always waiting. As if it hadn't ended. As if it had only just begun. I've heard a lot of strange things about truck drivers and the road, but I always thought it was an exaggeration from people who spend too much time alone. Until it started happening to me. I've never been one to stick to a time, but I noticed that every time I looked at my truck's dashboard during the early hours of the morning, it said 3:33. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. So I thought the internal clock might be faulty. But then I noticed something worse. All the clocks I had with me, the one on my phone, the one on my wrist, even the digital timer in the cabin, were stuck at exactly that time. And they only started working again about 20 minutes later. Always alone, without explanation. It started on a long trip from California to Arkansas. Every stop I made would always fall on this cursed hour. I would leave everything running, checking the time all the time, but as soon as it hit 3:32, the next minute everything would freeze. It was like time had simply stopped. The first time I noticed this, I was a little puzzled, but I kept going. But over the next few nights, something strange started happening at this exact time. It started with noises in the back of the truck, as if someone was walking around, even though the cargo was just closed and tightly secured bundles. Dry, measured noises, like footsteps. On the third night in a row, I was already expecting something. I left my cell phone with the camera on, filming the inside of the cabin, just in case. At 3:33 a.m., the entire truck shook, as if it had hit a pothole, but the road was smooth. The lights on the dashboard flickered and went out for a few seconds. And during that time, I clearly felt as if someone was sitting in the passenger seat. I didn't hear the door, I didn't see anything enter. But I felt the weight, the sinking of the upholstery, the heat. And a smell that wasn't mine. An old, damp smell. Like a closet that had been closed for years. I was completely paralyzed. When the lights came back on, the bench was empty. But on the dashboard, a small, dirty handprint, right where the fan light hits. It looked like a child's hand. I had no way to prove anything. I reviewed the video, but the recording stopped at exactly 3:32 and started again at 3:53. A lapse of 21 minutes. Always the same interval. Always the same time. From then on, I started trying to avoid driving at that time, but it wasn't always possible. And every time it happened, the events got a little more intense. Closer. Harder to ignore. As if something was trying to break through a barrier. And each time, she managed to get a little closer. There was one night in particular, on a secluded stretch of Interstate 70, that struck me more than any other. I was used to clock stopping, to the strange feeling at 3:33. But that night was different. I was sleepy, but struggling to keep my eyes open, and when I looked at the digital clock, it froze. 3:33, and at that exact moment, the truck's radio turned on by itself. No sound, no station. Just that low noise, like interference. And in the midst of the hissing, I swear to God, I heard breathing. Slow, heavy, like someone was behind me. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw what looked like a face. Just for a second. It was a pale face, with very deep, black eyes. But the worst part was that he seemed to recognize me. It wasn't just any apparition. It was like that thing was waiting for me. I froze. I felt the blood drain from my fingertips. I turned around all at once, but the back seat of the cabin was empty. When I looked back in the rearview mirror, the face was no longer there. But the radio kept crackling, and the sound seemed louder, closer. I started hitting buttons, turning it off, changing the station, but nothing worked. It only returned to normal at exactly 3:54 a.m. The same pattern. The same time. Always 21 minutes. The next morning, I found scratches on the inside of the passenger door. 3 parallel scratches, as if someone had tried to get in or out. I ran my finger over them and felt that they were deep and recent. I even showed them to a mechanic in Denver, and he asked if I had transported any animals trapped in there. I didn't have the courage to tell him the truth. After that, I began to realize that it wasn't just the truck. One night, I stayed at a motel on the side of the road just to avoid driving at that time. I locked everything and turned off electronics. But I woke up at exactly 3:33 a.m. to find the TV on, static, and the bedroom door ajar. I went to the front desk in the morning to complain, and the attendant swore that no one had entered or left the system at that time. When I got back to the room, there was a wall clock that I swear hadn't been there before. And it also read 3:33, stopped. From then on, I began to notice that, even far from the truck, the thing followed me. It was as if time had broken around me. As if 3:33 was a window. A specific moment when something from the other side tried to get in. And each night, that thing seemed closer. More present. As if it knew I was losing the strength to resist. The last time it happened, I was driving near Kansas City, with everything turned off, radio, Bluetooth, GPS, even the dashboard. I wanted to avoid any interference, try to get through that time without attracting attention. But it was useless. At 3:33 sharp, all devices turned on by themselves. The dashboard lit up, the radio hissed, and the cabin interior light began to flash. Only this time, it wasn't just noise. There were voices. Lowered, whispered, saying things I didn't understand. As if it were another language. I huddled in the seat, trying to ignore it, but I felt the presence so strongly that I broke out in a cold sweat. I looked at the passenger seat and saw it again. It wasn't just a shadow or a smell anymore. It was a figure. Small, crouched, like a child, but with the wrong proportions. Its arms were too long, its head tilted slightly as if its neck were dislocated. It was standing still, but I could feel it watching me. I felt the truck shudder, the air in the cabin became heavy, dense, as if I were breathing water. I couldn't move a muscle. I just stood there, staring at the motionless thing. It stood up slowly, without making a sound, and placed its hand on the dashboard. The same dashboard that had stopped so many times. And then, everything went black. I woke up on the side of the road, sunlight streaming through the windshield. The clocks were working normally. No glitches in the systems. No signs of interference. But there was something in my hand. A folded piece of paper, as if it had been placed there while I was drifting off. Written on it in a handwritten, sloppy script, "You've passed. But she's still coming." I have no idea what that means. I don't know what I passed. And I don't know what, or who, is still coming. Nothing has happened at 3:33 since then. The clocks work. Everything seems normal. But that's the problem. Now I wait. I watch for any sign. Because nothing ever goes away like that. Not after all this time. Something was activated on that road, at that time. I just don't know if I escaped, or if I just got deeper into something that hasn't shown its full potential yet. I sleep with the dashboard covered, with the clocks facing down, but I know that when it happens again, it will be different. It will be final. And whatever that thing is, it knows me. It knows where I am. And I've never looked at a clock the same way since.